Thank you. Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to season number 13 of the Attrition Sim Race Campus Oval Series presented by SM Racing Products. Tonight, we are here for the first time in over a year at the Milwaukee Mile up in West Allis, Wisconsin. Third time that the league has ever been here to this track, and I'll tell you what, it's been quite a while since these drivers have been out here. Quite a while since these drivers have been to a track like this one. And of course, when they last were here, it was in a very different type of car. The last couple of races that were won here in the ASRC Oval Series were all done in the Tour Modified. And back then, Brian Sabelski and Corey Logan were the two drivers that took home the wins at the two times we were back here at this speedway. Opened up back in 1906, the Milwaukee Mile is one of the oldest racetracks still in operation here in 2024. Of course, they host the NASCAR Truck Series, IndyCar. Not really anymore IndyCar, but the IndyCar Developmental Series still come out here. The ASA Late Models, USAC Silver Crown, the Mid-American Stock Car Series, you name it, they still come out here to Milwaukee. And of course, track length is 1 whole mile. The name came from somewhere, and for those of you that don't use miles, that is 1.6 kilometers, but I don't think the Milwaukee 1.6 kilometer has quite as much of a ring to it, but it works out. 74 degrees out here in Wisconsin today, but a whole 96 degrees Fahrenheit for the track temperature. So it's going to be pretty hot here for this one, especially as the track is only going to be getting hotter throughout the day. That said, drivers are making their way on down to the starting grid, so let's see how we are going to be shaking things up here for round number 8 of the season. Starting out on the pole here with a 30.276 to his name, that is going to be the purple and white Everfrost 00 of our current championship leader, Mr. Garrett Hess, rolling it off position number 1. Starting off in position number 2, that is going to be league admin Mr. Jason Gardner in the ASRC number 93, rolling it off position number 2. Third place going to be going back to the unsponsored 78 of Derek Murphy, rounding out our podium here with Brian Sabelski in the number 85, four-time champion here in the league, past winner here at this track in the Tour Modified, and runner-up in our current point standings, rolling it off, position number 4. Back in position number 5, that's going to be one half of the SM Racing Products team. That is going to be Mr. Garrett Streets in the SM Racing Products 15, driver out to Baker, Kansas, rolling it off, position number 5. Then starting back at the tail end of this 6-car field, that is going to be the CZ Robotics number 24 of Corey Logan at the tail end of the field. Another driver that has taken home a win here at this mile-long speedway. As usual here in the ASRC Oval Series, the race is going to be 100 laps or 100 miles, whichever comes first. In this case, it's both at the same time. We will also have overtime attempts, so we could actually have a little bit more than our scheduled race distance here this evening. Just a big what if on how everything decides to shake out here tonight. It's going to be 6 cars making the call to the field, which is actually roughly where it was for each past visit here to the Milwaukee Mile. I believe it was 6 and then 4 for the last 2 races, so pretty decent showing here for tonight's event. And of course, Garrett Hess comes into tonight's event. Oh, we're only doing 1 pace lap here, race fans. We're getting ready to go green already. Green flag up in the air here at the Milwaukee Mile. Garrett Hess off to a really solid start down into turn number 1. Derek Murphy trying to follow behind down on the inside line. And surprisingly, it's actually working out not half bad for him in that number 76 machine. He is losing a little bit of ground to Garrett Streets up on that middle line. And sure enough, he's going to fall back just a little bit. Corey Logan having to move up high just to try and get a run on that number 76. A little bit slower perhaps than Logan was expecting that 78 to be. But single filed out around the speedway here. So far, so good, as lap number 1 goes into the books without any sort of incident. Garrett Hess leading the field here like he leads the championship standings. Currently has a roughly 80-point lead over Brian Sabelski right now. And of course, Sabelski running back in that 3rd position. 2 wins to his name, 4 to Garrett Hess. And in the early goings of this thing, it's looking like things are looking pretty good for that 0-0 here as well. But still a whole lot of what-ifs up in the air. These drivers, or more specifically this lead, ASRC, has never run Milwaukee in a proper stock car like this before. The last time they were here were in the modifieds, and back then the league was also open setup, so it was a pretty different experience to what these drivers are having here on the raceway. And I don't believe that Garrett Hess was present for either of those past Milwaukee races either, so all these drivers have a little bit of a leg up over him in terms of experience here running in the league. Looking around the field though, looks like pretty evenly spread out for these 6 cars, about anywhere from 8/10 to a full second separating each driver here. Only 5 laps in the book, still a long way left to go here tonight. Pit stops are going to be a factor here this evening. That should be one of the big what-ifs here, is how these strategies play out and how well these drivers actually manage to nail, presumably, green flag pit stops. Of course, we don't know for sure whether we will be pitting on a green or not here this evening, but it's pretty safe to assume, with how spread out everyone has gotten so far here in these first 5 laps, that there shouldn't be any particularly notable incidences here this evening, unless someone has kind of a major oopsie here on this speedway, which is needless to say is possible. The last time the league was here at Milwaukee, it was another 6-car field, and they did end up having a caution. So it's not to say that it's not impossible here. So far so good, everyone's looking a-okay. But of course, this track, only 9 degrees of banking. That is only just barely more than the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. And just like New Hampshire, especially with this 100-degree track temperature that these drivers are having to put up with, tire wear is going to be a significant factor here in tonight's events. Right now, drivers running lap times in the 30-second range. I have a feeling that those lap times are not going to last here tonight. A lot of these drivers are going to be losing a ton of pace over the longer run of this thing. And even just between practice and qualifying, there was a difference in lap time. The fastest lap in practice, also to our pole sitter Garrett Hess, a 30.09. Fastest lap in qualifying, a 30.276. So just in the transition between practice and qualifying, these drivers lost 2/10 in pace overall. Right now, setting lap times in the roughly 30.5 to 30.7 range. A couple of drivers setting 31s and 32s right now. So it really is just completely all over the place here in terms of lap time for these drivers. Right now, things looking pretty good for our current championship leader of Mr. Garrett Hess. Just has to make sure he doesn't do any sort of substantial blunders with his pit stop, doesn't completely burn his tires off. Of course, Hess took home the win last week at the Michigan 200. Then it was Brian Sabelski that took home the win at the Indianapolis Raceway Park, which is a track very similar to this one in terms of banking. It's a very flat track over there, but not quite as long as Milwaukee is here. Then back behind that at the Iowa Speedway, another track that has formerly been run by IndyCar and still is today. That was a track that Garrett Hess took home the win at. Then it was Brian Sabelski again back at the Charlotte Motor Speedway for round number 4. Then Garrett Hess takes home the win back at Dover. And then he also took home the win at Daytona, and then at Phoenix, Jonathan Cofield took home the win. Unfortunately, Cofield has not really been able to attend any other race so far here in season number 13. So Cofield's all the way back in the 10th position in the championship standings. He's not really competing for a championship at this rate, especially with how the drop weeks filter in. He's been gone for a lot more than 3 races. But pretty much the championship here coming down. I mean, it still could go either way, because sure, Garrett Hess has a really big lead over everyone else right now. He's not mathematically locked into the championship yet, but he has a very big lead over the rest of the field. But then Sabelski, Young, Murphy, and Gardner are all right next to each other. Garrett Streets is in there as well. Brian Sabelski, back in second, has 117 points to his name. Then Mike Young has 111. Derek Murphy and Jason Gardner are tied for 4th with 101. And Garrett Streets back in 6th with 96 points to his name. For reference, the most points that you can get in an ASRC Oval Series race, if you take home the win and every single possible bonus point, is 35. That puts a little bit of context into how close the battle for second on back to 6th is in the championship standings. But Garrett Hess, again, nearly 80 points over the rest of the field to his name right now in that 00, and now leading the field by nearly 3.5 seconds. Currently the closest battle on the speedway is back here between Jason Gardner and Brian Sabelski. Call it about 0.6 of a second between these two drivers, and Sabelski is gaining. Last time by 30.93 for Sabelski, 39.7 for Gardner. So it definitely is a slow gain, but gains are being made for the second position here. 15 laps already in the books. Going to be 85 left to go here at Milwaukee. Quite a packed grandstand for only 6 cars, but I'll tell you what, I respect the enthusiasm that this crowd is bringing out to the field here in Wisconsin. The gap is now closed down to 0.3 of a second. It looks like Jason Gardner may be already starting to struggle in that 93 machine a little bit with tire wear here. Last time by, Sabelski was about 0.3 of a second faster than Gardner, and now he's looking to try and make the move here as we head down the start-finish line down into turns 1 and 2 once again. Sabelski's going to send it down low, and he's going to pull up alongside that number 93 machine. Gardner not really able to do anything to try and hold off the move from the number 85. Now the question is, can Sabelski close up this 4.2 second lead back to Garrett Hess? So far, it's looking like the answer is maybe. Last time by, Sabelski was a couple of thousandths of a second faster than Hess. As we cross the line this time by, though, the stories flip. Still only a couple of thousandths of difference between first and second in terms of lap time. But that time by, the advantage did go to Garrett Hess. Jason Gardner not quite out of this fight, though. Last time by, 0.7 of a second slower than Sabelski. So definitely something under the hood of that number 93 machine not quite working the way he wants it to. I say that, but actually that time around, a lot more identical lap times between Gardner and Sabelski. Looks like being able to actually follow behind that 85 machine and get a better feel for what he's doing here. It's allowing him to make some of that time back now, down to 3 to 4 tenths of a second roughly between these two drivers. But Gardner is still very much in this battle for second. Of course, right now both of them are looking pretty comfortable in the podium positions as a whole, though. A full 5, actually call it closer to 6 seconds back to Derek Murphy back in the 4th position. If nothing else, we can at least say Derek Murphy can't possibly finish in 7th here tonight. And actually last week, for those of you who were able to tune in at the Michigan 200, we had 2 drivers up in the broadcast booth that aren't usual faces up there. Of course, Garrett Hess took home the win back in Michigan, but then we had Michael Sparks back in 2nd and Derek Murphy back in 3rd. It was really great to have these 2 drivers up in the broadcast booth here with me at the end of the show, able to get some words in with these drivers, hear what it's like from some of the folks that we don't see taking home the podium race after race. As we cross the line, though, list time by looks like, again, identical lap times between Hess and Cebulski. Gardner, on the other hand, about 3/10 slower that time around. So Gardner definitely starting to fall back here in that number 93. These lap times not looking good for him. Now the question is starting to see is Gardner falling back because he has used his tires too much here in the opening goings of things, or is he staying back because he's trying to save them? Did see a little bit of slide out of the number 93 machine coming out of turn 4, so I'm starting to lean a little bit towards the former. As much as I hate to say it, I think Gardner has maybe used those tires a little bit more than he is meant to here in the early goings of this one, but they are still the closest two drivers on the speedway right now, with only 1.3 seconds dividing them compared to the 4, 5, 7, and 8 second gaps that we are seeing around the field right now. Jason Gardner starting to fall back a bit more here last time by. Again, only 0.15 off the pace last time around, but definitely he's losing a lot of speed mid-corner. He's just not able to carry that car through the same way that Cebulski is. Let's take a moment. Let's look down on board with this driver going down into 3 and 4 and see. Oh, well, there's a scrape against the outside wall. That ain't doing him any favors. Trying to slow it down all the way to 87 miles per hour. It's the lowest we saw mid-corner. Let's keep a look on board. Keep going on down through turns 1 and 2 and try to get a better read of roughly what sort of speed he's carrying through there. Down to 90 this time, 91 through 1 and 2. Let's take a moment to ride on board with Cebulski in front of him. See what Cebulski is doing through the corner. Looks like he's entering maybe a little bit sooner and a little bit at a more shallower angle. Definitely still into the 90s in terms of minimum speed carried through this corner. Let's see how it is through 1 and 2. Going down to about 92. So honestly, not all that much different. Now let's take a look up at our race leader as he goes into the corner. Dropping it all the way down to 90 even. That's the lowest we've seen of the 3 drivers. So it looks like maybe slow and steady is winning the race through these flat, completely bankless corners here. Down into 87 now. That's even slower than what we've seen so far. So definitely a little bit of strategy in how we're handling these corners around the field. Right now, Garrett Hess up to a 4.4 second lead over Brian Cebulski. Last time by a 31.12 to the name. Let's see how that goes when we cross the line here. Get those updated times for you. 31.2 for Garrett Hess. So already at the point where these drivers are setting lap times a full second slower than their personal bests around this track. Again, that's personal bests in this actual race session. That is not as a whole here in ASRC. That is a full second off the pace from where they started at the drop of the green flag here tonight. These tires definitely falling off of these ARCA cars big time. And Garrett Hess closing in on that 24 of Corey Logan. Could potentially be the first car we see going a lap down here this evening. And you can see Brian Cebulski coming off the corner just behind, so pretty much half of a straightaway dividing our race leader from Brian Cebulski, though. It does look like getting around this lap car of Corey Logan has slowed Hess down here a little bit, as we see 24 of Corey Logan pull it on down to pit lane. I am not sure. This is a scheduled pit stop, and it looks like no, it is not. But sure enough, it looks like that 24 of Corey Logan has packed it up and brought it back to the hauler. So that will just leave 5 drivers left out here on the speedway. Garrett Streets going to be the next one potentially on the chopping block here this evening. 31.86 last time by. That's about 0.4 of a second off the pace that Garrett Hess is setting right now. Garrett Streets took home the championship of season number 12 last season. As you see him have a big wiggle coming out of turn number 4. Hang on to it, Garrett. Coming into tonight's event, though, Garrett Streets being scored back in the 6th position in the championship standings. So down, but not out of tonight's event. As we get ready to cross the line here, going to be putting us a third of the way through tonight's event here. I'd imagine we're not going to be seeing a lot of these drivers pitting until around, call it about roughly the halfway point is where I expect these drivers to pit. I think this speedway is too big for these drivers to try a zero-stop strategy. You can see our race leader, Garrett Hess, just behind Garrett Streets, though. Call it about 3 or so seconds back, maybe 4, more like it, separating Streets from Garrett Hess and the next driver to potentially be put a lap down here. Gardner now falling back a full nearly 5 seconds from Brian Sabelski, so he's just definitely not able to keep that momentum up here. And as the track temperature only continues to climb here, we're going to only see these drivers' pace slow further and further. And that's where we're going to really see whoever is best able to manage their tires shine here. Take a top-down look here at this overtake going down into 1 and 2. Actually, not quite close enough, but just taking a look at the difference in the lines here between the two Garretts. As we get ready to head down into 3 and 4, it definitely looks like Hess is taking a much shallower corner entry than these other drivers are doing, turning in a lot sooner and being able to carry a little bit more momentum through these corners. It almost looks like he's kind of diamonding it compared to all these other drivers, running a little bit of what I like to call the Stafford line, even though definitely a much bigger track than the Stafford Motor Speedway. Definitely a much narrower entry for Garrett Hess, and there's the 15 machine real close down there to the apron as well. Again, a wiggle on exit for Garrett Streets in that 15 machine, and he's going to be finding himself being the second car to be put down a lap here this evening. Now just leave us with 4 drivers left on the speedway right now. Garrett Hess not quite pulling away as quickly as I expected him to from Streets, though. So I think it's kind of a similar situation as what we saw between Gardner and Sabelski earlier, which now being able to see what the faster car is doing to get the speeds that he's getting through the corner, being able to follow in those tire tracks, it's allowing him to get a little bit more pace. But sure enough, we do see Garrett Streets start to fall out of the picture here a little bit. We're going to be 40 laps in the books this time around, 20 minutes here into today's event. Still got plenty of time left to go at the bright and sunny Milwaukee Mile, of course, here in West Allis, Wisconsin. I know on the real world schedule for this track, I believe they actually have like a vintage series that runs here every now and then. And they also got the NASCAR Truck Series coming here this year. I don't believe that ARCA is coming here. I don't think... I could be wrong on that. ARCA might actually be coming to Milwaukee this year. And I have the power to verify that right quick. Let's take a look here. Milwaukee is on the schedule for the ARCA Menard Series this year. They're going to be coming here on August 25th. And of course, the trucks going to be coming here on August 25th. Going to be the first round of the playoffs for the NASCAR Truck Series here at Milwaukee, as we have a driver up into the outside wall. I think that was Garrett Streets we just heard scrape against the outside wall. Still getting really squirrely on corner exit in that number 15 machine. That's not something that we've seen a lot of these other cars struggle with so far here tonight. But sure enough, you can see him getting some big slides on corner exit. If this were a dirt track here, race fans, he might actually be onto something in that number 15 machine, but right now, it unfortunately doesn't quite look like it's working out for him. Last time by, the only driver to set a time in the 32-second range. Everyone else in the 31-second range. Call it about... Let's see how it goes as we cross the line. We see Jason Gardner coming down to pit lane. Last time by, Garrett Streets a full second off the rest of the field. Let's take a look. Let's see what the play is going to be for this number 93 machine. He might just be trying to short pit the field here and see if he can't get a better finishing position off of its pit strategy. Right side tire is going to go on the 93. Will we see him be putting on all four? Sure enough, yes, he will. 4 tires and fuel going to be the call for the number 93 of Jason Gardner. And is he still on the lead lap? No, he is not. That will be bumping him a lap down. We'll just have to see if Gardner is able to make this short pit strategy work. I'd imagine the rest of the field probably won't come down until we actually cross the halfway point. At least that's what's my assumption here, is I haven't really been able to talk to any of these drivers here in the paddock here before tonight's event. So I could be mistaken on that, but that's what my hunch is on what we're going to see our race leaders do here this evening. Speaking of race leader, though, why don't we go ahead and take a moment to ride on board here with Mr. Garrett Hess. Get a little bit of crank it up action going. That could be a copyrighted phrase for all I know, so NASCAR, please don't come after the broadcast. We love you. I'll tell you what, race fans, I think it's safe to say that I called it here, as both of our race leaders elect to come down pit lane right on the halfway point of tonight's event. That's going to leave Derek Murphy still out on the speedway. And if he is able to beat Garrett Hess off pit lane, and sure enough, yes he is, he will be scored as our race leader. As long as he can hang on to that lead, Garrett Murphy will be taking home a bonus point here this evening. And hey, every little bit counts in this championship, especially since Derek Murphy currently tied with Jason Gardner for the 4th position in the championship standings. Every little bit could help in this battle to potentially take home a podium finish in the championship here in Season 13 of the ASRC Oval Series. We give him a lot of grief for seemingly always starting and finishing in the 7th position. But I'll tell you what, right, so far here in Season 13, Derek Murphy has been having some really solid runs. Of course, last week at Michigan, Murphy finished in 3rd. Back at IRP, brought it home back in 6th. At Iowa, got a 4th place finish. At Charlotte, got a 9th place finish. Back at Dover, a 5th. So a couple of top 5s here to the name of Derek Murphy. Also 6th back at Daytona. So Murphy has had a really solid run here in season number 13. And of course, he's going to pick up that bonus point for leading a lap here in tonight's event. And he's going to be bringing it on down to pit lane now. Looks like 3 tires and fuel is the call for the 78. Which tire did he not put on? I don't quite know. But no, 4 tires and fuel is going to be call for Mr. Derek Murphy as he brings it back out onto the speedway, and he should still be scored on the race lap, on the lead lap here, excuse me. Sure enough, that he is. Garrett Streets, however, is down on pit lane, and it looks like he is actually elected. Looks like Garrett Streets has also packed it up onto the hauler and called it an evening here tonight. So I'll leave just 4 cars left in the running in the final 45 laps here at Milwaukee, and still all on the lead lap for those 4 drivers as we see Jason Gardner come on down to pit lane. He's going to be the last driver to make a stop here tonight. Actually, this is Gardner's 2nd stop. And there's a bit of right rear damage to the number 93. I wonder if this is a scheduled stop for Jason Gardner, because that damage was not there on pit stop number 1. But you can see the right rear is definitely pretty substantially bowed in right now. And I'm not seeing any sort of tires going on that 93 either. So he's either just stopping for fuel or he's stopping to get damage repaired. Let's take a look back. Let's jump back about a lap or 2 and try and see if we can't figure out what happened to Jason Gardner. Sure enough, no damage right now on that number 93, so looks like we've jumped back far enough in tonight's event. Trying to figure out what happened to... Oh, big wiggle, hard impact in the outside wall. That's definitely a broken right front. Sure enough, that would explain why we saw Gardner take it down to pit lane. He is absolutely crab walking around the speedway here this evening. Caution flag won't fly for that number 93, but that is going to have him stuck down on pit lane, presumably for the rest of the evening. Already multiple laps down now, so that's just going to leave it to 3 cars left on the track. 2 of them left on the lead lap as Derek Murphy gets put a lap down here. And only 3.6 seconds between our 2 drivers on the lead lap here this evening. As we cross the line, let's see how these lap times shake up here. 30.68 for Garrett Hess, and as Sabelski crosses the line, 30.75. So Sabelski is losing the race leader by about 1/10 of a second, just a little bit under 1/10 of a second. It is going to be tough for that 85 machine to close the gap. I think now it just comes down to which of these 2 can better manage their tires for the remaining 40 laps here of this event. Last time by, again, 0.05 of a second between Garrett Hess and Brian Sabelski, so Hess is definitely pushing a little bit harder at the moment, but will he be able to keep that momentum up once we start getting into the 20 and 15 to go ranges here? Jason Gardner still down in his pit box. He has not packed it up and put it on the hauler though, so Gardner, if he has a very lucky stroke of fate, could potentially get back up to Murphy or Sabelski or Hess, provided one of the three have an equally damaging incident as he has. Right now, he is being scored 6 laps down in that number 93 machine. He has been on pit lane for about 3.5 minutes. If nothing else, with Streets and Logan having retired from tonight's event, Jason Gardner knows that despite that mistake, he will at least be walking away with a 4th place finish here this evening. And sure enough, we are going to see Jason Gardner bringing that 93 back out onto the speedway. Always good to see, even if he can't really contend for a race win here, which, I mean, it's possible. It would take a monumental stroke of luck, but it is possible. Well, he's also just getting back out on that speedway, getting more drive time under his belt. Every lap you turn is a little bit more experience gained, and that can make all the difference here in the final couple of races of the season. And it's crazy to think that we're already in the closing chapters here of season number 13. Only 3 races left after this one, as of course this is only an 11-week season because we took Christmas off. So for the first time in the Oval Series history, only 11 weeks instead of 12. But after 2 days event here at Milwaukee, next week we go road course racing, 41 laps at Watkins Glen International, followed by a 100-lapper at the Bristol Motor Speedway. Then we crown a champion with 150 miles at Kansas. So we've got a little bit of mixed bag for everyone here in the remaining chapters of this season. We got a road course, a short track, and then an intermediate oval. It could be anyone's game here. Of course, I don't want to be making any predictions right now with the amount of time left here in the season, but Garrett Hess did take home the last road course win at Tsukuba for last season's road course event, so could go either way there. Then, of course, the intermediates have been a little bit more spaced out in terms of finishes, so I'm feeling good about Garrett Hess. He does have a roughly 80-point lead to play with, but who knows how these final couple of races are going to shake out. I did talk to Garrett briefly, and he said that he was kind of dreading going to Bristol. That is a track that he very much does not enjoy, does not feel competitive at. And so I think just knowing that information, of course, could be a little bit of a red herring, but some of these drivers might be able to use Bristol as an opportunity to get a leg up in these final couple of races. Of course, you can't count out that 85 of Brian Sabelski either, because Brian is primarily a road course driver by heart. So Sabelski is also going to be a driver to keep an eye on at Watkins Glen next week. 67 laps in the books though, so only 33 to go here tonight. 35 minutes have elapsed so far, so at the rate we're going, should be done about 15 or so more minutes of competition for these drivers right now. Last time by, Sabelski, again, 0.05 of a second of difference, but last time by, faster than Garrett Hess. So it could be that 00 is starting to burn those tires away here just a little bit, and if so, that can make all of the difference for Brian Sabelski in the closing stage of things. Last time by, again, Sabelski faster than Hess. Hess might be pushing that Everfrost 00 a little bit harder than he needs to here this evening. Of course, there is that lap car. That's the 78 of Derek Murphy, still in between these two right now. If the caution flag were to fly, Derek Murphy would be put back on the lead lap, and it would be a 3-car dash to the finish. So Murphy pretty much just really hoping that something, anything, brings out the yellow flag so he can be in contention for this win. If nothing else, we could see Derek Murphy go 2 for 2 with podium finishes here in season number 13, and that alone would be a very impressive feat for the driver of the unsponsored, by the way, black and white number 78. I don't know if he's looking for sponsors on that machine, but you never know. Might not hurt to hit up that driver of Mr. Derek Murphy. As we cross the line, last time by, the tables were turned, and Sabelski a couple of hundredths slower than Hess. So let's see how they shake up as we cross the line this time by. 31.16 for Garrett Hess, 31.35 for Sabelski. Not a good lap for that number 85 machine that time by. It's just kind of fluctuating back and forth between the two of them of which one is faster here in terms of lap time. It's kind of a little bit of a game of chicken here this evening, because you don't want to push too hard too early and not have anything left to go with at the tail end of the race. Maybe not quite as much of a game of chicken as I've recently witnessed in the real world, though, as Sabelski pulls it on down under Mr. Derek Murphy. But last night, watching the World Series of Asphalt at New Smyrna, and one of their classes actually has a lap time maximum or a lap time minimum rule, where if you exceed a certain lap time at any point in the race, you are instantly disqualified. And it was a very fascinating game of chicken, because these cars could all generally go faster than that lap time. So it's a very interesting race when you're trying to take home the win, but you're also having to make yourself go slower than a certain amount. And we saw many drivers get disqualified for going too fast, and what we ended up seeing was a lot of brake checking going on right before the start-finish line. So fortunately, these drivers not having to do anything quite as drastic as those drivers at the World Series of Asphalt had to last night. Just a really bizarre form of racing that we saw these drivers get into. As we see, Garrett has crossed the line, though. Going to be 25 left to go here at the Milwaukee Mile. This time by a 31.06 for Garrett Hess. Let's see how it goes by for Brian Sabelski. Currently at a 31.34. So Sabelski is now the one losing ground on our race leader. And I'll tell you what, it's like I said, it's just a little bit of game of chicken. I was pretty convinced that Garrett Hess was just losing all of his speed for about 5 laps there, then suddenly he's back up to the lap times he was setting, and Brian Sabelski is falling away here. Still setting lap times roughly a full second slower than their personal best right now. But in all honesty, I expected the tire fall off to actually be a little bit worse than where they're at right now, so that's not all too bad to see. Of course, right now with how spread out the field is, things are not looking very good for Derek Murphy to be put back on that lead lap. But if nothing else, we're getting ready to close into the point where Derek Murphy can't finish worse than third. Because of course, with Gardner being stuck 7 laps down, it's going to be very difficult for him to make that back. He pretty much is depending on Murphy or one of these other drivers to wreck out for him to be able to make those 7 laps up at that point, because it's simply not possible for us to have 7 cautions, 8 cautions actually, because we'd have to put Derek Murphy back on the lead lap for the first one. So it's not possible to have 8 cautions in the next 22 laps to put Jason Gardner back on the lead lap with Lucky Dogs. Gonna be 21 to go as we cross the line this time around, and the gap has widened to 6.3 seconds between Garrett Hess and Brian Savelski. Of course, anything could happen here in these 21 laps, but right now things are looking really darn good for that 00 machine. Garrett Hess looks like he is primed to potentially take home win number 5 of season number 13. And that begs the question of, will we see Hess contend for the title of most wins in a single season? Right now, that title is tied between 2 drivers for the Drop and Bombs racing team, which unfortunately we have not seen out here in the league in a couple of seasons now. But right now, it is tied with 7 wins in one season between Mike Sukup and Tyler McRae. Of course, Garrett Hess, should he take home the win here tonight, will be taking home win number 5, and with 3 races left to go, should he win every race, he could potentially be the first driver in league history to get 8 wins to his name. But of course, Bristol, I think, is the big hang up there, because we talked to him. We know how much Garrett Hess does not like Bristol. But who knows? I mean, even if he just ties the record with 7, that's still a very impressive feat for a driver to be able to pull off here in this series. And of course, now he's pulled that gap up to just about 7 seconds between himself and Sadowski. Last time by, looks like 0.15 roughly, separating the 2 drivers at this rate. Garrett Hess having a very solid run here. I don't know how this 00 manages to preserve the tires the way he does, because of course, back at Michigan is a draft track, similar into the spirit of Daytona or Talladega or Auto Club up in Fontana. And Garrett Hess was pulling away from the pack that was all drafting together by himself. So he's got a whole lot of speed under the hood of that 00 machine. I don't know where he gets it, but that's why I'm the broadcaster and not the driver. Because he certainly has things figured out in seemingly whatever car we throw at him. He's taken home wins in this league in the street stock, wins in the late model, wins in the modifieds, and of course, plenty of wins in the last 2 seasons in this ARCA Menards car. Gonna be 15 to go once we cross the line this time by. If Sabelski or if Murphy or if Gardner have any sort of chance for anything lucky at this point to happen to him, it pretty much, at this rate, it comes down to luck for any of these remaining drivers. But right now, 15 laps to go. It's not a lot of time left for anyone to be able to make anything happen. Take a moment, let's go back down, let's ride on board with that 00 of Garrett Hess. Take another moment to appreciate the sounds of the iRacing.com simulator and the sounds of the ARCA Menards Chevrolet SS. Big double high fives from the flag man. 10 laps left to go here at Milwaukee. And I'll tell you what, Sabelski and Murphy almost had the stroke of luck they needed to potentially take home the win here in tonight's race. A monumental wiggle out of that 00 machine with about 12 to go when we were doing that onboard segment together with him. That was a scary sight for Mr. Garrett Hess, but he's still keeping that car point in the right direction. Still setting down some really solid lap times here over Brian Sabelski with 9 laps left to go. It's looking like that 00 has things in the bag here this evening. Looking a little bit further back here at Brian Sabelski in the number 85 machine. Currently kind of stuck all by himself. There's not a whole lot he can do here besides just continue keeping on, and riding it through to the end of this race. Last time by, about 1/100th off of Garrett Hess. So the lap times are starting to equal out between these two lead lap drivers, but it's too little too late to really make a difference here. That 8-second lap is not going to be closed up with 8 to go unless the caution flag flies. But still potential for Ryan Sabelski to be taking home another podium finish here this evening. Once we cross the line here, on to 7 laps to go, that guarantees that Gardner's can only get up to 3rd at the very most. But it is not possible for Gardner to get put back on the lead lap now. Now up to a 9-second gap, nearly 10 seconds between Sabelski and our race leader. He just cannot keep that momentum up. Their best lap times between Hess and Sabelski are nearly identical at a 32.8 and a 32.9. But right now, Hess is about 0.4 of a second faster than Brian Sabelski. You can see on the timing scoring that gap just continues to grow with every corner. Now up to 9.65 between these two drivers. And Garrett Hess letting it down into 3 and 4. Going to be getting the high 5 from our flag man. Going to be 5 more times around the Milwaukee Mile before Garrett Hess takes home win number 5 of the season and his first ever win here at Milwaukee here in the ASRC Oval Series. Going to be putting his name in the record books together with Brian Sabelski, our running up, and Corey Logan. Took home that win back in season number 6. But what a dominant performance by Garrett Hess. He has led every lap of this race, minus the laps led by Derek Murphy during the green flag pit stops. So Hess, provided he hasn't scraped the wall at all, might just pick up the maximum amount of bonus points that can be awarded here in tonight's event. Of course, bonus points for fastest lap, leading the most laps, and then 2 bonus points for having an incident-free race. Of course, that is going by iRacing's incident points, or 1 point if you are below a certain threshold of incidents. And so far, it looks like Hess has had a perfectly clean race, so it should be all 5 bonus points going to that 00, and that would mean he would be taking home 35 points here this evening and widening that gap even further over Ryan Sabelski and Mike Young. 2 laps left to go here at Milwaukee before we crown ourselves a winner, and it's now an 11-second deficit between Hess and Sabelski. All Garrett Hess has to do is complete the next 1.5 miles without doing anything stupid, and he should be in the clear here this evening, race fans. And as we come out at turn number 4, white flag going to go up in the air. Next flag ends the race, and it looks like Mr. Garrett Hess has got things in the bag here this evening. 1 more mile for the driver of the 00 before he towns himself a winner at Milwaukee and takes home the 5th win to his name here in season 13. And down through 3 and 4 for one final time, Garrett Hess is going to be your winner here at the Milwaukee Mile Speedway. Garrett Hess taking home the checkered flag. Brian Zabelski crossing the line not far behind in the 85. Last driver on the lead lap. That's going to be Derek Murphy rounding out the podium here this evening. 2 podiums back to back for that number 78. That's going to be Jason Gardner crossing the line to round out the tail end of the drivers still here in this event. Of course, Garrett Hess. Bring it on back up to the start-finish line. Going to be giving these fans a little bit of a show to celebrate win number 5. Alrighty, race fans, don't go anywhere. We will be back here in just a moment with some words with your top 3 finishers here this evening. Alrighty, race fans, welcome back to the Milwaukee Mile Speedway. 100 laps in the books here this evening, and it's going to be Mr. Garrett Hess taking home race win number 5 here this evening. Garrett, how are you feeling here tonight?
Feeling pretty good. I'd feel probably better if more people came, but a win's a win.
Yeah, I mean, a win's a win. The point standings don't discriminate on how many people are here at the race. So 35 points to your name. I'm thinking, I don't know the math for sure, but I think you got every bonus point that you can get here tonight. So definitely a nice little cushion heading into next week.
Yeah, it definitely helps to have a cushion. I don't know if I've locked it up yet. I don't think I have, but it's still not going to deter me from trying to win every race that I can. This is going to sound egotistical, but I don't know the record for most races won in a season. But it'd be nice if I could, break that. But
I know
I
that
don't think.
record. I can answer that question for you. It's
What is
7,
that
and
question?
it's tied between Tyler McRae and Mike Suka, both of which don't race here anymore. So it's possible.
Possible, but that I think that would require
That
a
requires you
win
winning
at
at
what?
Bristol and
Okay,
Watkins
that
Glen.
okay, so that's not happening, but I can get close. But yeah, it'd be nice if that could happen, but a championship's what matters more, and it seems like I'm sitting a little pretty right now.
Yeah, seems like things are going pretty good for you here tonight. I mean, you led every lap here in dominant fashion. Did you at least, when you came into tonight's event at least, were you worried about not being able to win here?
A little bit. The car was very loose in practice and qualifying, and while I can manage looseness, I did feel like I kept going way too slow in the corners, but seemed like it started to even out between everyone, and I slowly just built a gap. I kind of inflated my ego a little bit that I won by 10 seconds, but still, I had a lot of fun, even if not a lot happened.
Fair enough. I mean, it managed to work out for you here tonight. And of course, next week, the race you had yourself all excited for, heading road course racing at Watkins Glen International. How do you feel making right turns for once?
Uh, I'm excited. Watkins Glen is probably one of my favorite tracks. Full stop. Um, but I know how good Brian is on road courses, so if I could get within a second of him in lap times, that'd be nice. I think that all in all, it'll probably be a real good race if we get, you know, I'd say about 7+ people to show up because Watkins Glen, a nice flowing track, it can always create some great racing.
Fair enough. I'm certainly excited to see what all y'all are able to do down there next week. But for now, Mr. Hess, the microphone is all yours. Who do you want to thank for taking home 5 wins now this season?
Um, Actually, first I want to thank Corey Logan. He joined our a little endurance team that me and some buddies made. And we're planning on doing the Bathurst 12, and we kind of wanted a fourth because 3 people over 12 hours isn't really the best. So big thanks to him. But anyways, big thanks to Everfrost. Thanks to you guys for making this possible. Thanks to everyone who's shown up over the season. I want to thank my brother for giving me something to wake up in the morning. I want to thank the St. Mary's County Public School System for allowing me to do what I love.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out. Congratulations on the win. And I look forward to seeing you making some right turns next week at Watkins Glen.
Yes, sir.
And finishing back position number 2, Mr. Brian Sabelski. You get the honorary title of only other car on the lead lap. How are you feeling here tonight?
A little bummed they couldn't chase Garrett down. He was always just matching my times or like a tenth faster than me, and there was nothing I could do about it. So, props to him. He ran a good race. Yeah, just like this track, so did what I could. Probably burned a little bit too much on that second run trying to catch up to him, and slowed me down toward the end. So it is what it is.
Fair enough. Another podium to your name is still pretty solid in terms of championship points. I don't know the math on it right now and how that's going to be playing out heading into Watkins Glen, but I don't think that it's a done deal for Garrett to take home the championship. So how are you feeling with these final couple of races coming up? Watkins Glen, Bristol, and then Kansas.
I'm just bummed I'm gonna miss at least two of the three, if not all three, depending on how the weather is this weekend. I will be road racing on Monday night next week. I just don't know where I'm going to be doing it. If it's Watkins Glen or if it's Bathurst. Oh god. Um, but yeah, It's good. I like road racing, so we'll see. You know, I was kind of bummed because I like Bristol in this car. I love Kansas in this car. I always been really strong there. Yeah, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, came out, had a good time tonight. You know, get to at least go home with the second.
Yeah, that is true. And of course, we always hope to be able to see you out, but if not, then we hope things go well for you in your other races. Tonight, though, I guess the only real question that there really is what do you think might have had to have happened differently here tonight for you to be taking home the checkered flag?
Needed a caution or like an actual mistake from Garrett hitting the wall, doing something. You know,
Yeah,
something
that's
like that.
definitely fair. Especially with how spread out the field got at some points. It was a little bit difficult to make anything happen.
Yeah, it was just kind of like you're just kind of like rolling around, just waiting for something to happen.
Well, one way or another, still walking away with a podium finish here tonight. And hopefully, we'll be able to see you for the next couple of races. If not, then definitely fair enough. But for now, the microphone is all yours, Mr. Sabelski. Who you want to thank for making everything happen?
No, shout outs as always, everyone hanging out in Twitch chat. How y'all doing? Of course, ASRC for putting on the league, Jason for doing all the hard admin work, McConey setup shop, the official setup shop of eNASCAR, for sticking with me. Um, Hopefully, I have a few more people to thank as well next time next time I'm around. Of course, thanks to you, Aiden, for doing the broadcasting, and SM Racing for doing the sponsoring and also putting together my Find the Button box. So very happy with the product. It's good stuff. Check them out. And that's about it.
Good deal. Thank you for coming out here tonight. Hopefully, we'll see you next week. If not, good luck at Bathurst.
Thank you. Thank you.
And finishing back in position number 3, Mr. Derek Murphy, 2 podiums in a row. You're making things happen here this season. You came in tonight tied for 4th in the championship standings. How are you feeling here this evening?
I mean, it's nice to get the podium. Didn't feel, last week felt a lot stronger than this week. This one it felt like a lot of other people had issues that got me this podium, but I'll take it. Got a couple laps led, which was nice. Got a point there, so that works.
You got some points. You got another podium to your name. You've broken the tie with Jason, so that will move you comfortably up into 4th. And since Mike Young isn't here, that actually should be enough points to put you into 3rd in the championship. And next week, we're going road course racing. Do you think you have what it takes to keep it up here next week?
I'll give it a shot. I don't do it too often, but and definitely not in the ARCA car, so that'll be new for me.
Fair enough. I think that it's going to be pretty new for a lot of people. We did run that race at Tsukuba last season. I don't remember who all was present for it. But of course, Watkins Glen is going to be a very, very different road course than Tsukuba was.
Yeah, I did run that race, but I did not get very far into it. I know I self-spun and just got off the track to avoid a caution and ended it there.
Fair enough. That'll do it sometimes. Hopefully, next week's race will go a little bit better for you. But for tonight, you walk away with a podium finish. You move up in the championship standings. And all in all, things look pretty dang good for you.
Yeah, just want to thank everybody in this league who make this happen. You for broadcasting this, and everybody who's been showing up and at least filling out a field.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out here tonight, Mr. Murphy. Congratulations, 2 podiums back to back. And looking really good in the championship standings as well. I look forward to seeing you next week at Watkins Glen, though. Good luck making some right turns.
Thank you. See you there.
You heard it here first, race fans. Your top 3 finishers here this evening: Garrett Hess, Brian Sabelski, and Derek Murphy. Of course, those 3 drivers weren't your only 3 cars out in the field. So how about we take a look down at our race results, see how everyone else did here tonight. Ran home back and forth. That's going to be the 93 of Mr. Jason Gardner, followed by the 15 of Garrett Streets back in 5th. with Corey Logan rounding out the tail end of this 6-car field. So that's all we got here from the Milwaukee Mile up here in Wisconsin. Pretty decent race for the limited number of drivers I was able to attend here this evening. Next week, throwing everything all topsy-turvy, though, for these Oval Series drivers, because I'll tell you what, generally right turns aren't included in an oval, at least in the motorsports form of things, but sure enough, we will be heading to Watkins Glen International to see who has what it takes to make right turns work in their favor. That's bound to be one heck of a race, fans. For now, though, thank you all for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing y'all next week. Have a good evening.